Oh, shalom, my friends, shalom, my enemies. This is your old pal, Rabbi Sol Solomon, founder and spiritual leader of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York. And oh boy, this person that we have in front of us may be the most prolific author that we have ever had on this program because she has, I would say, it's a mission. And the mission is to tell the stories of women back in the old days, in the old West, in old Hollywood, and how they got by and how they thrived and all the amazing things they did. Let me give you some examples of the book that CHRIS ENSS, this lady we're seeing right here, has written. Those include Daughters of Daring, Hollywood's Cowgirl Stunt Women, which is a brand new book, is available from Lions Press, plus Beautiful Mind, Women Prospectors of the Old West. This is the cover to that book right there behind me. An Open Secret, Story of Deadwood's Most Notorious Bordellos. I'm reading that one with marker. The Buffalo Gals, about women in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. First Female Physicians of the Frontier, the story of Republic Pictures. So there's also this whole Hollywood thing as well. And oh my God, a biography, The Life and Times, Straight Lady of Margaret Dumont. Oh my gosh, we are delighted to be talking to the winner of a Willa Cather Award, for nonfiction, and a Will Rogers Medallion Award winner 9 times. Count them, 9! And in July, she will be at the Imaginarium Convention in Louisville, Kentucky. Again, won't we please welcome CHRIS ENSS? Shalom, Chris.
Shalom, shalom. Thank you so much for having me being a part of your broadcast. I appreciate it.
You're most welcome. And we just want to hear so many things about all these different women. So let's start with the most recent lady in your book. Do you mind, is lady not a good, can we use words like lady, female, woman, chick?
Absolutely so, because that's exactly what they were. So absolutely so. That's
Right?
why I love writing about women of the American frontier, because they didn't have that, they didn't come west as saying we are women and this is what we're going to do. They came west just as a human being because they wanted to make a better life for themselves. The fact that they were a woman just was, a side issue.
All
So
right. Well, I mean, it also affected every aspect of their lives too. I mean, it's different. It is different. I'm sure you've shown for men to be doing those kinds of jobs and making those kinds of trips, etc. From women, they had all the issues men had plus others. I'm assuming.
Well, the thing is, when you were going west of the Mississippi, you could create the life that you wanted because it was not populated. So you didn't go west of the Mississippi. You didn't have any of those same issues of those stagnant morals that you had east of the Mississippi, where women were thought to be this and they couldn't be any more than this. That disappeared when you got into independence and were heading west. It disappeared. You could be whatever you wanted to be, and they needed people in the West, and you couldn't subscribe to those same kind of ideas anymore.
Well,
That's
let,
not
let
to
me ask
say,
specifically about folks who populate your latest book, Daughters of Daring, about stunt women. And you were talking silent movies, 1930s, 40s also, right?
right,
So
right.
what are some examples of great stories about women who were doing, subbing for Mary Pickford or Lillian Gish?
Well, I think my favorite one is going to be Ruth Rowland and Helen Gibson. And what I found amazing was some of the very first action adventure pictures were all based around railroads. And these women always played telegraph operators, and so you're in during your job, the telegraph wires would have been cut somewhere, and their job as a telegraph operator was to get on a horse and ride as fast as they possibly could to a bridge, to a water tower, to a mountain, to be able to jump off of these items onto the train, to be able to run on top of the train and get to the engineer. And these were all done by women. The Ruth Rowlands, the Helen Gibsons, hanging from towers and doing these amazing stunts. Women, I think it was Ruth Rowland, who also stood in for Claudette Colbert in a couple of pictures and did some of the amazing. It happened one night. There was a scene where Claudia Colbert takes this dive off of this ship into the river, and that was another woman who came in and did it for her. But a lot,
Because we would imagine that the director would put a guy in a wig, a young guy in the wig. If it isn't a close-up shot, they fudge that even more. But okay, they
right.
used actual. So
They actually,
yeah,
and they used women when they were doing those first great action Western pictures because women sat lighter in the saddle than men. And so, because of that, they were able to make these amazing leaps over railroad cuts from chasm to chasm. They just sat lighter in the saddle. So, many of the stunts that you see attributed to Tom Mix or William S. Hart, that was Alice Van Springsteen. That was Mary Wiggins. That was not those men.
well, I
So
hate to ask this question then. Were some of these people really badly hurt or even killed doing this kind of thing? Or
yeah,
were they surprisingly resilient and they got hurt, but nothing terrible?
they did get hurt. Some of them, they cracked ribs, they had concussions, but they were able to move on. I mean, there's a section in the book about how little these women got paid. If you arrived on the set and all day long you were just writing, you got paid $11.50 a day. Um,
Compared to, I mean, we're talking about whatever, 1930, compared to what was the star actress making, what were the other stagehands or people on crew making?
Well, as far as the crew, they were making anywhere from 50 to $75 an hour. You were not
What, when? Back when?
back in the 40s, yeah. If you were a stagehand, these are the things that you were making. You were a grip, you were doing these, you were traveling behind these fast-moving vehicles. I mean, it wasn't and the thing is with stunt work, and you'll see this in the book too, with the stunt work, it was the only piece work that there was in motion pictures. So it wasn't like it was grafted in it wasn't into the budget. It was piecemeal. So if you were going to jump off of a bridge, if it went so high, then you got paid so much money.
Oh,
So they based it like that. It wasn't like, well, they're going to do the stunt off the bridge. We're going to give you $50 for that. No, it was how high the bridge is. Okay, if it's really high, it's 50. If it's not really high, it's 30. So, I mean, it was a scale.
and they weren't paid for the full. They would come in, pay for the stunt. So if they had to wait around for the shot and what, they didn't get extra
That's
like.
it. You got paid for the stunt. Yeah. It was quite an amazing, but there was no other. And I think what's so great about this book coming out now is the first Academy Award is going to be given to stunt people in March. They've never done that before. So, gosh, and it would be great if a woman got it. But I mean, I have no idea, but I bet they're gonna look at the Mission Impossible films and probably throw some shade that way,
By the way,
as well.
I want to remind people that the book we're talking about, your latest book, because you've got, I'm not kidding about this, more than 50 books to your name. It's Daughters of Daring, Hollywood's Cowgirl Stunt Women from Lions, Lyons, Lions Press, available where all basic books are sold. But when did you first, CHRIS ENSS, when did you first start getting into this whole idea of the untold stories of women either settling the West or settling early Hollywood?
Well, I started writing about women of the American frontier when I moved to California about 30 plus years ago. I wanted to be a stand-up comedian. That was the only thing that I wanted to do when I was in college. My idol was Toady Fields. Probably no one even ever remembers Toady Fields, but she
Oh,
was.
she didn't have a leg to stand on. but
Yes, look at you. Yeah, I thought that she was amazing and worked my way through college doing stand-up comedy. I got to open for Phyllis Diller and for George Burns.
Stop
Yeah.
right there. Please tell us either an or a Phyllis Diller or a George Burns story, if you have any, of
Okay, well,
knowing them.
Mr. Burns was wonderful. I would go in and I would talk to him in the mornings, and he would, or the afternoons. It wasn't like he got up at the crack of dawn, and I'd say, "How are you, Mr. Burns?" And he'd say, "Chris, I looked at the obituaries this morning and I wasn't there, so I can go on. Yeah,
Classic, classic. What
right.
about Phyllis?
Phyllis Diller just was always telling me, Chris, never change your last name. It's just keep it. It's an unusual last name, and you spelled it right. I mean, you pronounced it correctly.
Well,
That's
because
right.
I'm reading off a piece of paper here,
Yeah, but
but
a lot of people don't. But she said you got. I don't know what kind of name that is, but you need to keep that name. So it was. She was wonderful. She was, just a lot of helpful.
although,
But
if you think about it, with all due respect, you did not become a famous comedian. Maybe if you changed your name to, Chris Davenport or
okay,
Davenportowitz, so
but
you have the Jewish crowd.
in the end, I really wasn't. And I got to be on Showtime's Search for America's Funniest People, and I was down to I was one of the last 12. But in the end, I didn't really, you have to really like that lifestyle. I mean, you have to enjoy being up late, getting playing these gigs where, maybe you get on stage for 10 minutes at 12 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock in the morning. And I just ultimately, and I do nothing but clean material.
Oh,
And so you can't follow a guy doing 15 minutes of having sex with a puppy when you do clean material. You can't. And you know that the audience is rolling. And you're like, oh, okay. And then there's me. So,
someone
it's
has to
you
wipe the puppy and put it to bed afterwards, so maybe they could appreciate, but
find something.
yeah.
I mean, it just wasn't, you gotta know what your gifting is. I mean, I loved doing it for a while. I love traveling around doing it, but after a bit, I thought, is this really what I want to do with my life? And probably it's because I went to my high school reunion, and I had been doing comedy ever since I was in high school. And some of my classmates said to me, "So Chris, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I just did this Showtime Search for America's video." And they said, "Oh, so you're still doing comedy?" It was the worst
Yeah.
thing. So you're still robbing banks. I just remember just the way they said it, and I thought, okay, well, I
So you
have
should
got
say,
to
yeah,
go
you're
on.
still showing up at high school reunions, middle class, stupid and broke. Okay, great,
Yeah,
good,
there
good.
you go. There you go.
So, all right,
So,
but before I let the comedy thing go, because I do love me some comedy, do you mind sharing like what your favorite joke was that you used to, or little bit was that you used to do, whether it was on Showtime or before then?
okay. One of the very first jobs that I got doing stand-up comedy was at a strip club. Now, so help me. I have no idea why they wanted a stand-up comic at a strip club, but I would follow these naked ladies who did this routine naked on tricycles, and the routine was, I know it's just
And the
bizarre.
tricycles had no seat on them, so it should tell you something. Yeah, no,
It's
yeah.
just so bizarre, and they had these it was just a weird thing. Anyway, and then I would they did this whole song to they did the routine to the song "My Boyfriend's Back." So, and then I would go on afterwards. And and I would, but I really can't complain about it because not a night went by that I didn't get a lot of laughs for those guys taking my own clothes off. So, it just it was an unusual setting, and you couldn't really stick with your own jokes because now you're playing for a house full of drunks
Well,
who
yeah, and
wanted
also,
to.
could you do clean material? Maybe they wanted in between the dirty. They wanted clean because men, after they
They were
they need a few
these
minutes to chill. So
these
maybe
guys were these guys were incredibly drunk. So I would come out and I would do a little bit of my shtick, which was just traveling around doing comedy and telling about my adventures on the road. And then you'd have to leave that and then just go from person to person, riffing on the drunks.
oh yeah,
So there really wasn't any. I mean, I did have material and I did get to do some of my material, but
there you
most
go.
you would have to put that aside because now you're playing for drunks. And what they came for was to be able to hear you riff on other drunks. So that's what you do. It was like I was the big-haired Don Rickles of the
Okay, or a Richard
of the
Belzer.
sketch.
That's
Yeah,
there's something to
that's
that
what I
too.
did. That's what I did.
But I can understand why you gave
Yeah,
the
I mean,
showbiz up.
right. I mean, that's not because I thought it was going to be a lot like the Carson show. And I know, where people were wanting to hear what you wanted to say. And when you're out on the road doing comedy, a lot of times you're playing for people who are ordering drinks or eating or talking to one another. You're not playing for people and they've paid a cover charge to hear a comic. I don't know why you're sitting talking to your friend. I think the most trouble I ever got into when I was on the road doing comedy, um, there was women sitting up front and they were talking the whole time. And I left my routine and I said, ma'am, where are you, what's your name? Where are you from? She told me her name and I said, I'm sorry. I don't think I'm going to be able to remember that. Do you mind if I just call you bitch? And I got into so much trouble, so much
Well,
trouble.
not with the club owners, where I assume they
Oh
wanted to
yeah, the
beat you.
club owner. She went crying to the club owners and said, I'm so offended. Anyway, I had to apologize. I had to make sure that she had drinks. It was just so stupid. And so that's why I thought, wait, this isn't what it was. Wait a second, where's the brochure? This isn't in the brochure. I thought
This
they were
isn't what I signed
careful.
up for when I wanted to
Yes,
make people hear me and laugh. No,
right,
I get it.
right.
It's sort of like
So
when I come to my synagogue and I do sermons, and they want help with their lives and they want to know about the world, and I just want to get jokes out. And they're like, no, tell us, how can we deal with Bondi Beach? How can we deal with us? I was like, come on, no, this is a great joke. What's the matter with you? And it just irks me terribly.
yeah.
But let's get back to your transition from the world of hilarious comedy to the world of women who made frontier lives for themselves. How did you start writing about them?
Well, I moved to Nevada County, California, and it's not a very big place. And when you move here, you've got to register to vote and then sign up for whatever you're going to do at the local radio station. I'm teasing. It just seems like that. Everybody filters into the radio station. So I was doing history minutes at the radio station, and I started writing about women. And I thought, wow, these women are pretty amazing. The first woman I write about is a woman by the name of Nancy Kelsey, and she's the first white woman to cross over the Sierras, and she does so barefoot, carrying a 1-year-old baby on her hip. And
She
she
should have
was,
put the baby on her foot. It would have saved it. It would have been much
yeah,
softer. Yeah.
just walk on the child. But she was the only woman with the Bidwell Bartleson wagon train party, and it took them 5 months to get from Independence to California. And that child was never sick a day. And it just was just, and I thought, this is amazing. They get lost at one point and they leave her in a little cave in the Sierras with the baby until they find their way and then they come back and get her. And
Over
then
the course of days, weeks, how long did
it
she
was
have to?
more than a week that she was in this cave with the child. Um, and then
And the
they
baby
get,
was delicious.
yeah,
Yeah. That
right
seventh day,
in
she got
right
real
in the
hungry.
heart of Donner Party. Well, the Donner Party didn't happen too far from that location anyway. And then they get all the way to Northern California near the Oregon border where they're going to settle with her husband. And they're not too terribly long. And their husband says, I want to go back to Texas. So they pack up everything and they go to Texas. And en route, one of their daughters is taken captive by Native Americans who were just really irritated that white people are there. And
Really? I never understood that. We were going to ennoble their race, and they just never glommed onto that fact. It's unfortunate.
yeah,
But so they grabbed it. What did they do with the girl? Is it, what did
They,
they?
they, the girl was missing for a while. They found her finally. She had been scalped, but she was alive. And so,
Wait,
yeah,
what, was she wear
Nancy.
a hat? What do you mean she was scalped, but she was alive?
Well, I guess there's a way. Like I know a whole lot about scalping, but I
Yeah.
guess there's a way that you can do it where you've not cut into. You just it's sort of like you're lobotomizing somebody. You've cut off a portion of the brain. The little girl, of course,
Oh,
the
the
child was.
brain? Yeah, I thought it was just even the skull, and they leave the brain. What?
No, they nicked whatever it was, and so the child was not right, and so Nancy had to take care of her. The child, of course, eventually dies. But I mean, that was life traveling west.
Oh,
That's what it was.
if I tell you, I read about these Taylor Swift concerts, and they said there's all this scalping going on. They've got to stop this. This is horrible.
I had no idea what was that kind of thing. You mean they're doing this at Taylor Swift concerts? Like, I need to get out more. I spend way too much time writing. I had no idea.
So was that your first book about this woman?
It was called With Great Hope, Women of the California Gold Rush. And so I wrote about her and several other women who really made their mark in the gold during the gold rush time. And then that did very well. And so I started writing about mail order brides of the American frontier because I was fascinated with that subject. That men would, there weren't a lot of women in 1850 when the gold rush was in its peak. And so they started advertising for wives, and they all did it in a newspaper called Matrimonial News. And they would, it would be like number 150, and then they would have what they were looking for. And then by 1865, women were now advertising in those same magazines because of the Civil War. There weren't a lot of marriageable men left. So they started advertising for husbands. And it was interesting because um, women, when they advertised for a husband, what is it that you think that they were looking for most? If you had to guess.
Someone who could farm, plant, put together a lean-to shelter. I mean, that kind of thing.
They were looking for somebody that was solvent, somebody that already
Oh,
had lots of money, and they would make sure that a certain amount of money was put in an account for them, that if they got all the way west and didn't like you, they had enough money to go back home. Men, on the other hand, were
well,
looking for, what do you think men were looking for?
well, now I'm aside from the the cooking, the cleaning, the making babies and carrying on the name. No, none of that.
They were looking for somebody that was musically inclined. It was they were very lonely in the West. They had no refinements, and music hearkened them to home and made them feel comforted.
Huh, huh.
So if you could come west and you could play an instrument, you could sing, you were gold.
Girls, practice that ocarina. What can I tell
Yeah.
you? So, one thing about all these books that you've written about all these different kinds of women, the research involved. It's like, does it involve a lot? Because you started writing, the internet was already there, but it wasn't this extraordinary treasure trove where you just Google everything and wiki everything. So, did you go to libraries? Did you go to historical societies? Where did you get all this background to tell people?
I'd like to go to these specific locations, and I like to go to the historical files. I like primary source material. I'm also a licensed private investigator, so I love the deep dive. I love to be able to get in and pull material that no one's seen before. One of the books I've written is called The Widowed Ones, Beyond the Battle of the Little Bighorn, and I have all of Libby Custer's things. I was able to research until I found a gentleman who had her things. And then over the course of several years, I was able to get all of them.
All
So
right, so
that's how
more questions. Why would you need a PI license in order to just
I
ask
I
people for stuff? I mean,
I didn't get a PI license for that. I got a PI license for another thing, but being able to use your PI license to get into, because a lot of historical archives are in private hands. If you watch the Antiques Roadshow, if you watch Pawn Stars, that's where a lot of this historical material is. And that's where you got to go. And when I'm writing about things in the American frontier, I, so much of history is found in the walls of some of these buildings because people didn't have anything to insulate with. And so they used paper, they used newspapers, they used letters, they used diaries, they used documents. You go into homes, you get their permission to be able to do a little pin mark with a little knife to go through and then pull these things out.
and then you pay for the reconstruction of the wall or something.
Well, you don't do that. I mean, you're not taking a bulldozer to it. You're just doing a little knife to reach in there and pull this stuff out.
Oh my!
Sometimes you don't find anything, but a lot of
Wait,
times
wait,
you do. When I was doing research on the Donner Party, one of the locations I went to, they had a loose floorboard in their attic, and I said, "Can we just pull this up?" And when we pulled it up, I found 150 vials of the Donner Party cabin. At one time, when people were coming west, the Donner Party was huge. But it was that happened in 1846. So when the gold rush was going on in 1849, people knew of the Donner Party, and they would go buy the cabin and they would take pieces of it. And eventually someone said, let's just go ahead and dismantle it and let's use it to raise money to be able to build a monument here. So that's what they did. And so those 150 vials that I have, I wish I could
What
have
would be
grabbed
a
them from
vial?
there.
Like a medicine, like one of the
Like, like,
beaker?
like just a little bitty jar that's got a tag on it that says $1.50. And it's a piece of the Donner Cabin. And that's what they used to raise money to build the monument.
So what is your prized, if not a physical possession that you got to keep, but when you were writing something, you went into a house, you talked to somebody, you talked to someone who knew the original this or that. What was like the holy grail for you?
And when I die, I have no family, and people are going to go, "What? This woman was insane." But here's one of the things that I got that I thought was amazing. I've written a lot about Dodge City. Kansas was just pivotal for the American West. And one of the stories I wrote about was Thunder Over the Prairie, and it's called Thunder Over the Prairie, and it's about the most intrepid posse out of Dodge City,
That's
and it was
posse
made
with an
up.
O, folks. I know she
Yes,
writes
yes,
about women,
yes,
but that's posse with
right.
an O, yes.
And it was made up of Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday and Charlie Bassett and Bill Tillman. And they were on the trail of the murder of a songstress by the name of Dora Hand. Dora Hand sang at a place called the Long Branch in Dodge City. Wyatt Earp was in the Long Branch. I mean, it just the who's who of the American West was in the Long Branch. Well, the Long Branch burned down, and the city gave me one of the burned bricks. So that's what I have. I have one of the burned bricks in my office. As a matter of fact, I got
Oh,
it
oh my
right
God.
here.
Oh.
Hang on. Hang on. I've got it right
Yes.
here. I've got it right here. One of the burned bricks from the Long Branch, which I know people like. That's what I'm saying. It's one of those
It
wild.
also sounds like you're talking about New Jersey. That's why it's a little confusing, but
Yeah.
okay.
Here's here's the burned brick from the Long Branch.
And to know that you have to label all these things because you gotta, but I understand also, with all the respect, you mentioned something you don't have a family. I thought you said you had a husband, you married, and all
I
this.
have a husband. I don't have any children. I don't have
Oh,
anybody outside of that. So I mean, I don't have any extended family. I have no parents, no siblings. So
and something that also might, I don't want to say confuse viewers and stuff. Your husband is not the co-author of several of the books that you have written. You write a lot of your books with some Armenian person.
wow, look at you knowing the Army. That's right. It's Howard Kazanjian.
Kazanjian, sorry, yes. Anything with an Gian is going to be Armenian. So how did you make us, oh yeah, the guy is a film producer. The guy happened to co-produce a couple of movies. You might have heard of, one being Star Wars, the other being Raiders of the Lost Friggin' Ark. How did you intersect with him? And why aren't you writing screenplays instead of books then?
Well, he's such a wonderful guy. I wrote a screenplay called Die Laughing about a stand-up comedian who's mistaken for a mafia hitwoman. And it was entered into the Nickel Fellowship of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts, and it won, and he was one of the judges. And he wanted to know, he contacted me and he said, listen, um, I'm really good friends with Dale Evans, and we would like to do a biography of Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. How do you feel about writing this with me? And so that was it. He and I teamed up, and we wrote two books on Roy Rogers and Dale Evans, a pictorial called Happy Trails, and then the biography, The Cowboy and the Senorita.
So, so many different avenues to talk about with it. What is something that we would not expect or think about, or something funny or surprising or terrible about Roy and or Dale?
Um, I think if people knew, first of all, Dale was married before she married Roy, and she had a son by the name of Tom Fox. And Tom was a teenager when she married Roy. And Roy Roy had he was married to a woman by the name of Arlene. This is just how wonderful he was. Arlene, they adopted a little girl named Cheryl. Then Arlene found out that she was going to have a baby named Luann, so she has Luann, and then they have a son named Dusty, and or Roy Rogers Jr. And then when Dusty is born, and Roy was at the hospital with Arlene for days and days and days while, waiting for this blessed event. And, he's exhausted afterwards. And everybody says, listen, the baby's born. Just go home. Just go home. When he gets home, he gets a call from the hospital that said, you need to come back. A blood clot is broken loose and Arlene has died. And those particular days, it didn't get women up and walking around afterwards. And so Arlene dies, and Roy is left with this little baby. And when he gets to the hospital, I mean, he's so indebted to his fans that when he gets out of the car, and of course his fans recognize him, these little kids are saying, can we get your autograph? Can we get your autograph? And he's signing autographs, crying, saying, happy trails, happy trails. Just a dear person, and a lot of people don't know that Dale Evans wrote Happy Trails.
No, I had no idea.
Yeah, Dale Evans wrote a great deal of the songs that they did. Yeah.
And actually, that was such a lovely story. I'm not even going to make any sex with trigger jokes, as most comedians would if they were at the clubs where you were appearing and starting to do.
And that was something too, because Trigger was already a star in and of himself. He wasn't named Trigger until Roy bought him. He was known as Golden Cloud, and he was the horse that Olivia de Havilland rode in The Adventures of Robin Hood.
Whoa.
And he was one of those amazing horses that was really, really smart. They didn't really treat horses very well when they're doing those early films, and they would do something called the Flying W to some of these horses, and that's when they're riding along and they want to make it look like the horse has been shot out from underneath the rider, and they would string up a cord. So when the horse is riding, the horse would fall over this cord and oftentimes break a leg or whatever. But Trigger, or Golden Cloud, refused to do that. And because he refused to do any of those tricks, he just wasn't any good to the owner. And so they eventually sold him. And so Roy came in and said, I'll buy him.
So, but when Roy was doing all those cowboy movies, how did they fake when the horse was shot or hurt, or they never had a scene like that?
They never had a scene like that. Yeah, Trigger never did take any falls like that. No.
Wow. So many. We also, by the way, we're talking to CHRIS ENSS, and we are going to remind people how to spell that. ENSS. Was that shortened at Ellis Island or something? I mean, where is that?
I really don't know. I think so. I mean, it's German, which means help, there's a hog in my kitchen. So it could have been, who knows what it was.
You know what it is? The means justify the ends. Damn it.
Look at that.
There's a good.
Once in a while when I tell people and they want to know, how do you spell your name? I love it too when people say, when I say, okay, it's ENSS, and they say, are you sure? Am I sure? Yes, I'm sure.
It's pretty sure of your own name. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
She is the author of Daughters of Daring Hollywood's Cowgirl Stunt Women, which you can get from Lions Press and everywhere, Amazon, all the different places books are sold.
It doesn't come out until February 3rd.
Oops, sorry.
It's all right. It's okay. Pre-order.
Pre-order. Yeah, where can they do this? Do you have a website that you have a great website?
They can go on my website, which is chrisenss.com. They can get it, pre-order it from Amazon. They can pre-order it from Barnes & Noble. Go to your local bookstores. Support your local bookstores. Go in. Say, can I have this book?
The bookstores, you've written so many books that no bookstore has room for them. They can get that book. They can get The Doctor is a Woman about the physicians. They can get they need a whole room for CHRIS ENSS. By the way, I'm sorry for mispronouncing. I guess it's ENSS rather than ENSS.
No, you said it right. It's fine.
Okay, cool. But we need to ask so many other women that you've written about, but we've got are you the only person who's ever done a full biography of Margaret Dumont, beloved Marx Brothers? I won't say foil, Marx Brothers co-conspirator, if you will.
Well, she was known as the fifth Marx brother. And yes, this is the only book out there about Margaret Dumont.
So come on, tell us something wonderful where you'll know anything, any Margaret Dumont story.
Okay, well, first of all, Margaret Dumont and the Marx Brothers would go on the road and they would test the material that they were going to do prior to it being on film. And that was something Irving Thalberg insisted that they do. And so when they were in Chicago rehearsing A Day at the Races, Margaret took a lot of abuse from the boys, but she loved them. But they're on stage doing A Day at the Races, and there's a great scene of The Day of the Races because remember she plays a spinster she plays a widow who's checked into the sanitarium, and she's a hypochondriac, and Groucho plays Dr. Hacketapus,
Yeah.
Or Hackenapus. I like it. Checo says it like that. Dr. Hackenapus, and he treats Margaret Dumont's character. Now, he's a veterinarian for crying out loud, which just makes it, that much more funny. But anyway, when they are
He actually treated Golden Cloud when she had a little snort problem. Yeah.
There you go. There you go. But when they workshopped everything that they did, and people would come and see their shows when they were workshopping it. Now, it was only really supposed to be an hour and a half show. But it would sometimes it would go over 2 hours, it would go over 3 hours. Margaret was known as the True North because she always knew what the lines were, no matter how far off they would go. Because if they started getting laughs, it was hard for them to get back on track. But Margaret knew. Now, there's a scene in A Day at the Races where they are examining Margaret Dumont, and she's on a gurney, and they strap her down to the gurney. Well, of course, they do this on stage. And when they strap her down to the gurney on stage, they start spinning that gurney around as quickly as possible. And then they run it to the end of the stage. And it hits this little lip at the end of the stage, and it shoots her up. Now, she's not going anywhere because she's strapped to it.
All right, yeah. But
she's scared to death because that's not rehearsed. Whenever they would get a laugh, they would start doing a lot of things that at her expense.
And it's amazing she was a trooper because, she'd been in Day of the Races is, I won't say late era Marx Brothers, but it's after their heyday at Paramount. They were already at MGM for this. So she could have refused. She could have been no.
They did 8 pictures together. It was their 5th film. A Day at the Races was their 5th film together. But she was so used to working with them and knowing that they were violent. You never knew what they were going to do. She had a special girdle made, breast thing here made, so her ribs would no longer get cracked or broken. Because that happened often when she was working with them.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they would sometimes yell cue, and they'd come out with a pull cue and whack her.
No, come on.
Yes.
Or make a hickory or something, or rubber or something. Not rubber would hurt, but
no, an actual pull cue. Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was horrible, but it's funny as hell. But it's horrible.
One of my favorite stories is they are in Chicago when they're rehearsing, and they're staying at this posh hotel. All of them are staying at this posh hotel. So after they got off of work, they would go to this posh hotel. Margaret had gone out to eat with some friends, and when she got back to the hotel that night, she's met by the hotel manager who says, "Listen, we have to escort you out." And she said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, listen, we have it on good authority that you're turning tricks in your room." And she said, "There's no such thing as happening. Please let me go take you to my room and show you that no such thing is happening."
Oh no.
So when they get to the room, she's trying to use the key to get in. Checo opens the door and says, "Am I after these guys?" Then he leaves. Then Groucho is around there saying, "All right, I guess I'm here too early." Zeppo comes out, he does the same thing. I think the pièce de résistance is Harpo was in the bathtub wearing nothing but a tie. And he gets out like this. Now you got to keep in mind, she was much more well known when they started doing movies together. The Coconuts was the
Yeah,
first one.
yeah,
She was much more well known than they were,
yeah.
and was celebrated comedian and won several awards for her comedy, which makes the comment that she didn't know
She
comedy
knew.
that
Yeah,
Groucho he said is preposterous. She knew what she was doing. Anyway, poor Margaret got escorted from the hotel that night. She ended up at the railroad station. And she's just beside herself crying. Finally, the boys go and get her and they say, "We're sorry. We're really sorry. It was just a joke."
I
I
hope they
mean,
put her up for the night. They could afford. They could give her a place to,
yeah,
buy her.
they got her a place to stay, but I mean, by that time they had to get on the train and go to their next gig.
Oh my God.
So she's up all night at the railroad depot. Um, but I mean, it was a lot of those kinds of things, but she loved them.
Mm.
Um, the only time she was really so hurt that she didn't think that she was going to be able to, and wanted to know why, was when they cast Thelma Todd in Horse Feathers. Because she had been with the Marx Brothers. I mean, from the Coconuts, and I mean, she was very, in addition to being very funny, she was an incredible songstress. I mean, George M. Cohan wrote music for her. Cohen doesn't write music for people that are slobs.
Right, right, right.
She was gifted. Um,
So they
and so,
gave Thelma Todd a song, and they didn't give one to Margaret.
well, Margaret wasn't even in Horse Feathers,
Oh, okay. Wow.
but they
Wow.
tried to explain to her, listen, Thelma Todd plays a femme fatale.
Right.
You're not
Yeah,
a
it's
femme
not that kind
fatale.
of part. Right.
You
Yeah.
are you are a very stoic lady. You are a very regal woman. Thelma Todd isn't. I mean, Thelma Todd ends up being, they said it was, suspicious circumstances, but she ends up dead in her driveway in her car. But she was
I think it was
involved.
Phil Spector who did it, quite honestly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was
One of his
involved with
first. Yeah.
she was involved with the mob. So anyway, just Margaret's life was so
Yes.
phenomenal. Before she even met the Marx Brothers, I mean, her mother was a music student. I mean, I'm sorry, was a music teacher, and her father was a sailor, was a captain on a ship. And Margaret's born in 1882, and her mother and father are not married. And so it's quite scandalous.
Mm,
So
yeah.
she is sent to the Loreto Academy in Niagara Falls in Ontario to go to school because they don't want anybody to know that she's
A,
a child
a
of
bastardette, if
illegitimate.
you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Huh.
mean, we don't look at, everybody says baby daddy or mommy daddy or whatever nowadays. But back then, that was 1882. That was not, yeah.
So
And
I do
so
have to. I mean, all these wonderful things about Margaret Dumont. We want to remind people that CHRIS ENSS has written a bunch of other books and co-written books, including I get a lot of these, but you also have a book that you wrote about the early life of John Wayne. I mean, were you confused because his name was Marion and you thought you were going to write about another woman, or how did that come about? And tell us something we don't know about John Wayne, the Duke.
Um, I think what I learned about John Wayne that was pretty fascinating was he was not well treated by his mother. His mother was not kind to him at all. He was initially born Michael, and when his little brother was born, his mother changed his name. She wanted the other son, she wanted the second son to have that name, so she changed his name to Marion and gave the other name to his brother. She wasn't kind to him at all. She wasn't kind to John's father. And John was very close to his father.
Oh,
And so when you recognize how horrible his mother was to him, I mean, that was something that broke my heart when I'm doing it. I had no idea that he had that kind of upbringing where she was just so awful to him. And he tried desperately to always, until she passed away, to really, win over her approval, and it just never did happen. His second wife, Chada, she was quite the fiery Latino, and
Latina, well, Latinx, Latin A,
Latinx,
Latin
whatever,
Q, Latin P. Yeah.
whatever. She was a spicy Latin woman, and just a burning temper all the time, very jealous. And John Wayne was good friends with Gail Russell. Gail Russell was a stunning actress who did Angel and the Bad Man, and just an incredible actress, very gifted, but an amazing alcoholic. Her story in and of itself, I write about her in Republic Pictures book. Just because she was incredibly shy, she tried to get over it with alcohol, and it just, she ended up unemployed a lot of times and just doing things that you shouldn't have done. But Wayne took pity on her and recognized what the pitiful creature she was. But Shada always saw it as something else. She always said, "Well, you're doing this with her," and he never was. And so oftentimes the police were called over to Chada and Wayne's home for domestic violence, but it was her that was smacking around on Wayne, not the
My
other way around.
God.
He
Wow.
would never have lifted a finger to her. And that's why you can't write about John Wayne and not recognize what an amazing human being he was and how generous he was with everybody. He just was a kind person. There wasn't anything he wouldn't do for someone. And
Now,
I think he was conditioned to take abuse from John Ford because he had taken a great deal of abuse from his own
his
mother.
mother, and then you got the wife. Well, the
Right,
wife came after, I guess, John Ford, maybe
right.
not. Yeah.
And
Now,
the thing about Wayne too that people don't know is that he was a gifted prop manager before he was ever on screen. He was credited with a number of films being a prop manager, which is how he caught the eye to begin with to John Ford. Wayne was so good he could anticipate what was needed by a director before they even asked.
that is good.
And people don't recognize that he had a background in that.
Now, we also want to, because we have just a couple of minutes left with the wonderful Chris Enns here, and we want to get to more women and more things and more that. But the question is, if you go on your website, chrisenss.com, it shows all the books you've written and be able to get them and read them and stuff. But there's also a list just as long of books that you're working on and have in the pipeline. Am I wrong about how many books are you working on at any given time, and where do you find the time?
Well, I haven't slept since 72, so that helps.
Yeah.
Um, I'm working on usually two books at a time,
Okay.
if not more. I'm usually working on two books at a time. Um, I just am hot wired that way. I don't know why. I do sleep, but I'm not a good sleeper, and so I just get up and I write.
So how many hours a day average or over the course of a week do you think you spend writing? Yeah, and I can include research and thinking and revising and writing, but yeah.
I get up, I get to my office probably around 8:30, and I'm still working about 9 o'clock at night every day, every night, every day, every
And this
night.
is how you write. How many books a year? 4 or 5 books a year?
You do two a year,
Oh,
two and a
oh.
half a year.
But still,
Yeah.
that's beating the hell Stephen King. So, Mike, so what are the two books that you are, if you don't like talking about them? Well, some writers are like, no, no, until it's finished. But if you want to say, what are you working on now?
I just finished a book called The Last Ride, the story of Laura Bullion and her life with the Wild Bunch. Laura Bullion was the only woman to rob a bank with the Wild Bunch. And just this amazing character was very much in love with Ben Kilpatrick, who was with the Wild Bunch. They got arrested robbing a train in 1901, and she spent 5 years or 3 years in federal prison. She got time off for good
Did
behavior.
they nickname her jail cell the Bouillon Cube? I'm sorry.
They should have,
They should, yes.
if only, my friend.
You can steal that one. Yeah.
I will. Anyway, she just was another sad character, but women made great strides in a great many things in the American West,
Crime.
including crime, including crime. Yeah.
So that's
So
Bullion. What's your other book that you're?
the other book that I am working on is called West Went the Word, and it's about women evangelists who took the word of God beyond the Mississippi. Sometimes it worked out for them, a lot of times it didn't, because they weren't satisfied with just being able to preach the gospel to Native Americans. They wanted to they wanted to change them, change their manner of dress. Narcissa Whitman in the Pacific Northwest wouldn't even allow them to go into the church that she and her husband built because she said they were dirty. They had to build their own church, which those kind of behaviors and a number of other things that she did led to her murder.
Oh,
So,
wow.
you know,
Okay. Now,
uh,
this does lead me to ask a somewhat personal question here of Chris here. Is at one point, I don't know if it was before we started, we were off the air or on the air, you quoted from, I think it was Ecclesiastes. You seem like a religious person. Your co-writer, the Armenian dude, he's very, very Goyish and Christian. And how much does religion play into your life?
um, it's everything. I don't know that I would be able to get by without my relationship with the Lord. I am convicted all the time that I don't behave the way that I do. I feel a lot like Peter, and I'm so glad that there was the Apostle Peter because he opened his mouth long enough to insert another foot, just to change feet, because that's pretty much how I am. But if it wasn't for my Heavenly Father, I don't know how I would have made it. He has been with me constantly. And I was talking with you about 1 Corinthians
Oh,
6.
Corinthians, sorry. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And how, it talks about your body being the temple, the Holy Spirit living within you, and how now that the Holy Spirit is within you, your body is the temple. And it's not necessarily having to do with sexual indiscretion, although that's what 1 Corinthians 6 is about. But it's
I'm not that familiar with the New Testament. I have to, let's be
well, and
clear on that.
let me tell you something. I love the Old Testament too. I don't know how
Good.
you can read. I don't know how you can read Isaiah and not know what's going to happen. I mean, my favorite book is Malachi. I don't know. My favorite verse is in Second Kings 16, which is about eyesight, which is about being able to see beyond what your naked eye sees, but be able to see.
Or if we're being, semi-clothed eye, because the nudity
Right,
is a problem. So, yeah, this
right,
see beyond your
yeah,
semi-clothed eyeballs. But
right.
you are a true actual believer, but a spiritual believer, and it works for you. Obviously, it's taking your. You were a woman who were in 5 car crashes in a year, right, or something like that. Or yeah,
Yeah,
that's
right.
true, right?
Right, right. That's exactly right. I mean, when I was in college, I mean, God's always been with me with the writing thing too. Even before that, you know, I had a very difficult time, but He's seen me through a great deal, and I want my actions to mirror the fact that I know that the Lord is my Savior. I want that, and I feel terrible when I misrepresent. And I know that we're human and we're not going to be walking on water. I know that. But when I do things on purpose, I think, what are you doing? What are you doing? You know better than that. And so I want to be mindful of that. I'm not going to, none of us are perfect. I just know that I'm saved. I know that He lives. I know that He lives in my heart. Um,
Well, I just
like
wish I
you
could
said, I
walk on
love,
borscht. That's what
I,
I.
I,
Yeah.
I love the word. I love the book of Malachi. I know you can read Malachi and not get jazzed. I mean, Malachi is great. Um, I love Hosea. I love, I mean, listen, Lamentations, you can take that. I
Oh,
don't
I
want to
take
get going.
Lamentations all the time. All I do is
Oh,
lament, ladies and
no
gentlemen.
one wants that for crying out loud. But,
But
I
I
mean,
don't, I do not lament that we have been able to chat here with Chris Enns. I'm going to spell her name one more time because it's she's so proud of me for doing that. ENSS, and it's Chris Enns CHRISENSS.com for a really wonderful website. There's great pictures of you. There's great pictures of your book titles and also period photos. Not you having your period, but period that you're writing about in the Old West and the frontier.
That really doesn't bring in the viewers. I find, you don't get a lot of clicks for that.
Yeah.
But I want to tell you, if people go on my site now, there's an opportunity for you to enter to win a free copy of Daughters of Daring. So, just go and enter to win. I give away a book a month anyway.
So, but you know what? This woman deserves to be paid. She works 12 hours a day writing. So you can buy the friggin' book. It's called Daughters of Daring, as she said, Hollywood's Cowgirl Stunt Women from Lions Press. Not to mention that most of your other books, if not all of them, are still available there for purchase. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely so. Yeah, you can get all of them. I mean, my most recent one prior to Daughters of Daring was Meet the Kellys. It's about Machine Gun Kelly and his wife, Catherine Thorne Kelly. Gangsters. I mean, who doesn't love a good gangster story?
I'm sure, and when you get Machine Gun Kelly, you're certainly going to want to rifle through that book. Damn it. Okay.
Oh, I got 1 million of them.
I do. Anyway, CHRIS ENSS. You've got to come back with us, in a month or two when you've written 4 more books. So we want to get you back more stories, because we haven't even talked about the physicians in the West, the new books, more characters, more that you care about and share about. A delight. CHRIS ENSS, thank you so much. And
Thank you. Thank you. Shalom, shalom.